Is that what you guys like? That's the ASMR, the coffee ASMR. I had to make a second batch just so I could do my Foley work here on stream for you guys. Yesterday morning, I had accidentally poured all my coffee before I went on stream, and that's just not allowed. I need to give the people what they want, which is ASMR coffee sounds and me tilting my lineups. Last night on the tilt space, our lineups, collective lineups were trash. Little did I know, Leone and Holka each had their own sweats. They saved their best plays for their personal lineups, and I saved awful lineups for everything. It wasn't actually that bad. It was just a little disappointing. I saw some people, though, who were watching yesterday, some people in the Run the Sims Discord channel and the Deposit Kingdom Discord who had great days. A lot of you guys, it seemed like, tailed me on that Russ double stack, which worked out pretty well there with Russ Wilson. Who was it? Someone got second in the SPY with that lineup. Let me get this screen share over here. Need to check my profile. Second in the SPY. Can you imagine? Fantasy Pope. Congratulations, buddy. You took my own ideas and made a better lineup with them. Look at this lineup here. He's got the Russ double stack, but because he's too sharp, he goes with Lockett instead of Metcalf. And then the Zach Pascal bring back. Can you imagine? Absolutely incredible. I actually, in some of my initial builds, I had Michael Pittman as the bring back instead of Jonathan Taylor. But going to Zach Pascal here at 3,700, too sharp, too sharp. I love this mini correlation. Keenan Allen and Antonio Gibson. They don't go nuclear, but that's all you need. You jam Christian McCaffrey, the best play. You play Corey Davis as leverage off of the Elijah Moore chalk. And defense doesn't matter. Very nice lineup, Fantasy Pope, $5,000, and watching the DFS exposure cram. I'm very excited to have that show this year. Last year, I did a preview on line movement, rest in peace. I didn't do a morning show on my channel, and I'm excited to have that. I think we can talk through lots of situations. So if you missed it yesterday, we'll be here every Sunday morning at 10:30 to kind of talk through the slate, all the latest in news, ownership movements, our favorite plays, all that good stuff. Congratulations, Fantasy Pope. How are we doing in the chat? Is there anything more tilting than having a low-owned Henry in a good matchup completely bust? That's the Derrick Henry experience, though, right? You play him when he's low-owned, and you know that a decent amount of time he's going to flop. I mean, there's a reason he's low-owned because he's not, sitting there in just the primo matchup. So you just martingale Derrick Henry. When the field is off of him, you keep playing him. Seriously, I don't know what the deal was with the SPY stuff. Someone had messaged me that they even sent a support ticket to DraftKings asking them if they were going to roll out the SPY this week, and DraftKings said no. And then they apparently had a change of heart, hoping we do get some bigger SPYs. Yeah, the Russ double with DK and Lockett, that one's always tough. Just because of the amount you have to spend, you basically need the Kansas City explosion for that to pull off. My friend Drew, let me pull up Drew's lineup yesterday. He did the Mahomes premium double, which on a lot of slates, that's going to be very tough to do salary-wise. But on yesterday's slate, I think was so much value. It was very doable. Check out this lineup from Drew. Some of you guys might remember a couple years ago when I was doing these shows for Roto Grinders, I had Drew on as a guest, and apparently I need to get him on again because he's back in his God mode of building DFS lineups. I love this team. Mahomes double to Kelsey and Hill. What was interesting to me here was no bring back. I would have had a hard time making this lineup without a bring back. I think if I make this lineup, I probably have Kareem Hunt instead of Antonio Gibson. But what I love here is he goes with this similar construction of the field with the three cheap wide receivers, but he makes sure to get the contrarian plays with all of them. Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle, and Deontay Harris. I mean, talk about a sick play. Deontay Harris was not on my radar whatsoever, but the thesis makes so much sense with no Traquan Smith, with Marquez Callaway as chalk, with no, tight end to get excited about. I mean, someone had to catch some balls there. So I love this lineup from Drew, and then jamming in a little running back defensive correlation there with Mixon and Bengals. I think he said he ended up finishing in 7th. So very nice lineup from Drew. Leone had sent me a message last night where he was like, how much would you make if you just blindly played premium Chiefs double stack every week? And it does really feel like that. Like I said, I think it still has to be contextual to the slate and how much value is there. I feel like week 1 is a unique one for how much cheap wide receiver value we had. I don't know if we're going to get that again, but we will see. So congratulations to Fantasy Pope, to Football Lulz, Drew, on some nice lineups this week. We can head over and check out my spy lineup here as we say good morning. Some GMs. Monday morning, Brick about as refreshing as a fresh cut of grass. It does feel good to be back, Josh. It feels good. And you know what? I actually feel much better than I usually do, because when I was in Vegas Wednesday night through Saturday night, and I did my fair share of drinking. So I didn't drink yesterday during football. Normally we work our way to tilt space and I'm starting to drink. I'm starting to tilt. I feel crummy in the morning. I feel pretty good this morning. I even snuck over to the gym. This is a new ritual I'm going to try to do. I pulled the Davis-Maddox Stairmaster, but for Red Zone. I got my book phone and I went over to the Stairmaster, banged out 45 minutes on the Stairmaster while watching afternoon Red Zone, and then went to the sauna, and I didn't drink. I mean, I'm a new man. Will I keep that up? No, it will change next week. I'll start drinking and I won't go to the gym. But for one day, it felt good. It did feel good. King Coakley, good morning to all. Not only did I get killed yesterday, I have to drive to New Jersey today. So many L's. Actually, one more L for you, King Coakley. I've been meaning to get an apology from you about Christian Kirk. I remember one person continually roasting me for drafting Christian Kirk in my best ball drafts, which I'm not allowed to talk about because I might get arrested. But King Coakley, can I get an apology in the chat? You told me that I keep drafting the dusty garbage Christian Kirk, and I expect an apology. Christian Kirk looked pretty good. Let's see here. What do we have going here? Do we have Ryan Hodge in the chat? I see everyone adding Ryan Hodge. I looked at a handful of pros lineups and a lot of them didn't bring it back in the luxury box. Seems very strange. Yeah. I mean, I guess I get it a little more in the luxury box just because that's a smaller contest. But I think if there are weeks where you don't necessarily have to bring it back, where you don't have to rely on correlation as much, it's when there's so many good value plays. So I'm guessing that was the thought process there. It's still just very hard for me not to bring it back. And I mean, we saw with the Chiefs there, like the Chiefs reached, their ceiling outcome, but they needed the Browns to score to kind of push that. So whether you're putting in Chubb or you're putting in Hunt, Hooper, the tight ends look good. I think that to me is just how I'm going to lean. But man, those were very good lineups by Drew. This was my best lineup yesterday. Speaking of this, I've been doing the underdog, the Royal Rumbles, which is a very fun format. They're just these quick 6 round drafts. And this one I stumbled on a 43rd place finish for $100. And again, I was just focusing on correlation. In this one, I get Mahomes to Hill. I bring it back with Nick Chubb. I do a little mini correlation with DJ Moore and Corey Davis. And then because TJ Hawkinson was the last remaining best tight end, I tacked him on at the end. So yeah, I'm excited to play more of those. And as I mentioned yesterday, this is a very nice segue promo here. Today is literally the last day for the $25 promo on Underdog. Here you can see bottom left, free $25. I've gotten the emails. They said this is going away. They said this is not sustainable for a business to give new users $25 repeatedly when they sign up as first-time depositors. This is changing to $10. So if you haven't signed up and you want your free $25 from Underdog, minimum $10 deposit, sign up, use promo code Pete, link down below, yada, yada, yada. I'm excited about the contest to come. I think we're going to get some fun mid-season best ball contests as well. Plus these Royal Rumbles on the main slates are very fun drafts. So maybe we'll do some of those on the Friday show going forward. All right, let's go back to my main spy lineup here. Let me zoom in a little bit and we can look at what I did. Um, I talked about this on the show yesterday. I really liked the Russ double stack. I did Russ with Metcalf and Everett. We talked about this a little bit on the tilt space where a lot of the pivots of the wide receivers who went off yesterday, say, Adam Thielen over Justin Jefferson, say, even Lockett over Metcalf, who was another good one. There were a few situations like that. Um, because we weren't getting like a huge ownership discount, I didn't feel it was necessary to pivot to the guy I like less. Like in another example would be, Robbie Anderson or DJ Moore. Like I just was able to play my guys because all of those units were catching similar amount of ownership. So there wasn't a ton of leverage in going to a Thielen over Jefferson. Obviously, those plays worked out. And I think as the season goes on, we'll have some of these spots. Maybe it'll be this week where the field gets completely overconfident on a Tyler Lockett over a DK Metcalf for whatever reason. That's when I think it really makes sense. This week, I thought it was fine to pick your guy there. And that was similar, the Bengals, I guess it's not as gross with going to Jamar Chase as opposed to going to Adam Thielen. But yeah, I mainly played my preferred guys if I didn't think they were going to catch a lot of ownership. So anyways, the one I'm very happy about here is the bring back on Jonathan Taylor at 0.7%. Um, that's where I want to be living for these running backs here. It doesn't work out with Aaron Jones. Jonathan Taylor's fine. But if anything, I'm upset with myself for not being a little bit more contrarian. I think eating the Bills chalk at defense didn't make a ton of sense. Uh, Overall, though, happy with this lineup. The Russ double stack, bring it back with Jonathan Taylor. I do a little mini correlation here with A.J. Brown and Rondale Moore. Moore almost has a touchdown in the first quarter. He gets held. He was running wide open into the end zone. That could have looked a lot better. Rondale Moore was one of those plays. I talked about it yesterday where in my heart of hearts, I knew he was going to be fairly popular. I'm actually pretty okay with this ownership at 12.3%. I think it could have been worse. Like when I was playing him, I thought he was probably going to be more in the 15 to 17% range, but I was like, I love Rondale Moore. I want to have fun on this opening Sunday. I don't think I make that kind of move going forward. What else is interesting about this lineup? I did play just a one-off T. Higgins here. I didn't get a secondary correlation. I was having a hard time finding secondary correlations with some of the plays I liked. Like I liked Aaron Jones, but I didn't have really anything on the Saints that I wanted to do in a mini correlation. I like CEH, and I was having a hard time finding something with the Browns that I liked. I did like Tyreek Hill a lot, but then I would have had to punt way too much at running back in another spot to make it work. So this was kind of a thing where because I knew I wanted this Russ double with the Taylor bring back, I kind of boxed myself in and AJ Brown ended up being kind of my luxury, other pay up wide receiver there that doesn't quite get there. So it is what it is here in general, though, with this percentage on my ownership, I feel really good about. Um, Like I said, if there's a key mistake here, it's probably just forcing the AJ Brown, Rondale Moore. AJ Brown ends up coming in a little bit more popular than I thought. I guess that's about where he was projected at 18.1% though for a 7,100 wide receiver. I don't know if I love that in retrospect here. Yeah, that was my thing. Yeah, and I knew those guys were all gonna be popular. I just wish I would have pushed it a little more. And now circling back to what you posted earlier, Hodge, about a lot of the top players not doing the bring back. I think I got a little maybe blinded because I did like Waddle and I like Devonta Smith, but this is the thing I'm just constantly wrestling with where it's like, okay, if I'm playing Devonta Smith, then I want a Falcon on the side coming back. And I didn't like Mike Davis or Kyle Pitts. Leone ended up getting us on those guys for our tilt space lineups, but because I didn't have the mini that I love, I didn't prioritize it. But like looking back at a process standpoint, I did like Ridley, and that didn't hit as well. And I think I should have liked Devonta Smith more than Rondale Moore based on projected ownership. So maybe that's like one of the mistakes from a process standpoint is in this lineup, going with a Ridley, Devonta Smith, and letting that mini correlation and ownership advantage kind of dictate that. But man, in general, I had a tough time yesterday kind of narrowing down those secondary correlations that I like. I was fiddling with this lineup a bunch and I just really couldn't get stuff to fit. And maybe I should have let that be I don't know, just a hint that I didn't necessarily have to force the secondary correlations as much. I think as pricing gets more efficient, as ownership gets more efficient, those correlations will be something we want to rely on. But maybe I should have viewed week one as a little bit more of an anomaly as far as how much value we had there. Yeah, Higgins almost had that second TD too. That was a roller coaster game for Higgins. He left at one point on a cart. I was like, "Are you serious?" And then it was just he needed an IV. So thank God that T Higgins survived. I mean, it would have been brutal to lose both T Higgins and Jerry Jeudy, all of our second year wide receivers. Um, let's see here. Yeah, the E Moore hype was great for Corey Davis this week. Same with Pitts, but no one on Atlanta performed well. Yeah, I feel good about the Pitts fade. I talked about that yesterday. I mean, and it has nothing. It doesn't even really have anything to do with Kyle Pitts. I just think almost anyone who was catching an absurd amount of ownership or anything over 20% yesterday was just a bad play. There's just so many options on a slate like this with pricing that's released so far in advance. I mean, you're talking, okay, so maybe Elijah Moore on paper is a slightly better bet than Jalen Waddle. Is he worth a 30% gap in ownership? There's no way, right? He has to be a much, much, much better play than Jalen Waddle to justify that kind of ownership. So if anything, my takeaway is I wasn't contrarian enough. You need to push it because the field just gets so overconfident on some of these plays, and that's just something that's going to happen week in and week out. Guys pop as points per dollar plays. Touts double down on them because they're comfortable plays to tout, and that's where we can really take advantage of it. And Blender had a good thread about this yesterday too, which I think is always an instructive thing to look at about how we really can simplify our process here. I'll read a little bit here. Most people are going to start the vicious cycle of what was right and what was wrong this week. These folks will try to find data they missed. And he talks about overfitting here, which is I can certainly veer into that territory a little too much. Like, I'm overthinking my AJ Brown, Rondale Moore. I do think I'm okay to regret that a little bit just with my stubbornness on Rondale, but I think his point is good here that a lot of people are going to use a 1 week sample size to overfit. This will happen every week. We'll get half the things right, half the things wrong. These folks will never realize how small the sample sizes are with much of the data and how much variance there is in a single week's games. Sharper GPP players take advantage of this overconfidence every week by thinking more probabilistically about outcomes and exploiting where the field is too sure of themselves. I mean, that was the rookie wide receivers this week. We were so sure that it was Elijah Moore and Rondale Moore and then also, Marquez Callaway that all of a sudden Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, Jamar Chase, similarly great prospects in similarly great spots with similarly cheap price tags, just go underlooked for whatever reason because the hive mind is concentrated on a set of plays. So if the research in the world leads you to being a 50-50 and getting things right, you'd save time just flipping a coin and end up with the same results. Instead of succumbing to confirmation bias, simplify your approach and embrace the variance rather than think you can explain away outcomes in the far ends of the games. And then he puts a bow on it by saying if you just blindly built correlated lineups, QB wide receiver, tight end, bring back wide receiver, mini correlation wide receiver, opposition wide receiver, running back defense, and one-off running back, you'd be more successful just doing this on Sunday morning than whatever you've been reading, watching, and researching all week. And I think this is a really good point. And, it might even be like an anti-tout comment, right? Where it's like, well, if I just have to do that on Sunday morning, then what do I need any resources for? And he's basically right. You don't, but it's so hard for people to simplify their process. And that's why when I'm looking at my stuff on Sunday, I do just have that run the sim screener and I'm looking at ceiling projection, ownership, how often they're popping in the simulated lineups, and then just building correlated lineups off of that. And I do think we need to be careful not to overreact to stuff that isn't sticky, that we're not going to be able to apply week in and week out. So that's just a good takeaway, I think, to keep us anchored and make sure that we're not overreacting too much to week one news. Let's see here. At what ownership is CMC a fade? I guess at what point is he no longer leverage? Is it a certain price point, or is it always based on what the field is doing? I mean, I think Christian McCaffrey was a really good play this weekend just because he wasn't going to catch a ton of ownership and there was a ton of value plays to allow you to get him in. So I think it's obviously very slate specific. He has such a high floor. It's just if you're going to end up paying a $10,000 price tag for him, you really need him to access a crazy ceiling. So to me, I think picking your spots with McCaffrey where the slate opens it up and people are kind of distracted by other plays. Kamara pulled a ton of ownership off of McCaffrey. I think if we don't have Kamara there at what was he, $900 cheaper or maybe a little less than that, then McCaffrey catches way more ownership. Let's see here. I just want you to know that all I'm seeing here is Megan Fox's sexy Mogler VMAs looking is giving us flashback. Oh, was this a side ad on the tweet? Oh, now I see it. Here it is, Hodge. Megan Fox's sexy Mugler VMAs look is giving us flashbacks. All right, we'll click on it. All right, there you guys go. All right. Wow. Didn't think we were getting that shot on the Monday morning bankroll. GM everyone. Let's see. I wanted to look at my other lineup. I ended up playing two main lineups. I think normally I'll build 3 to 4 on my own and then another 3 to 4 with the tilt space guys. I wanted a Joe Burrow double stack. Sorry. I'm starting off your guys' morning. Very nice here. Let's see here. So this lineup, Joe Burrow double stack, very happy with that Tyler Boyd ownership. Burrow at 2.5%. Bring it back with Justin Jefferson at 5.7%. I go off the board with my running backs again, kind of living in this mid-tier, knowing the field was going to be going studs there. CEH at 2.2%. Najee, who, if you're not on Twitter, played every one of the snaps yesterday. Man, the snap count bros, they are out. They hibernated for the winter or for the summer, I should say, and now they are back. They are back. I ended up just tossing in Tyler Conklin here. This was a smaller field size here, 3,700. I felt like it was okay to just correlate that game stack. I didn't have a ton that I liked at tight end, so I just tossed Conklin in here. Pretty happy with that. 3%, 2,900 gets to 8 points, about what you're kind of expecting there. Maybe just hoping he binks a touchdown to really pay off. And then I did do the Diggs kind of Najee mini correlation. Was surprised Diggs wasn't catching more ownership. I guess people were afraid of the Steelers defense, maybe rightfully so based on this outcome. But yeah, happy with that. And again, here, just couldn't get all of the correlations to line up. I played the CEH. I kind of wanted to get up to Hooper if I could. I don't believe my salary allowed for it in this situation. And then play the Broncos defense, who is one of my preferred defenses here. So I don't know if I had a lot of takeaways from this lineup. I'm happy with the correlations. I'm happy with the ownership. I just doesn't get there. Get basically zero ceiling performances here. Lots of snowflakes. If you have Chase instead of Boyd and Jefferson instead of Thielen, we're starting to cook here. Obviously, for the Chiefs, you needed to play it through the passing game and not the running game. But again, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I believe, played almost all the running back snaps, or at least I think he had 95% of the running back touch share. Darrell Williams barely involved. So, as far as chasing the volume there at running back in a low owned way, I feel good about that. And Diggs will have better days. That is for sure. Let's check in here. Yeah. What was our other one? Tyler Higbee played every snap yesterday. I don't know if you guys heard that. Do we think people are going to overreact to Najee next week, or do we think the average player isn't going to be aware? Oh, we're going to see tons of overreactions next week. We are going to see a ton. I think it's going to be another very, very good GPP week, and I will be looking forward to taking advantage of some of those kind of overconfidence plays by the field. Let's see here. Yesterday was pain. It was. It was. I think it was buoyed by the fact that just football was back, and it was very fun watching Red Zone. It was very fun talking late swap options. It was very fun talking GPPs again. So it wasn't quite devastating. Like, I still have a pep in my step that might be gone by week 6, but yes, yesterday was painful, although nice to see a decent amount of you guys still had some good days as well. Um, on the Steelers front, how do we approach the Steelers pass catchers with Big Ben looking hashtag not good? They have attackable matchups in Vegas, Cincy, Green Bay, Denver, Seattle upcoming. Yeah, I think you play it like you always play it if you think they're in good spots. I mean, if your thesis is that Big Ben is, late career Peyton Manning and he's about to fall off the cliff, then you should probably just fade the situation. I don't know if I'm a good enough film grinder to make that call. To me, I would just be looking at discounts on which of those wide receivers isn't catching a ton of ownership. My guess is because Deontay Johnson had the touchdown, because Chase Claypool had the insane catch, maybe those guys become more popular and there's a buying opportunity on Juju Smith-Schuster. So it's pretty simple, right? Where a position group seems to have equal probability of one of them going off, you play some combination of the cheapest and the lowest owned of those three. So I think just a normal situation there of capitalizing on people's overconfidence and going with the player that is lower owned. Question: a lot of attention gets put on either large field GPPs and small field GPPs of under 1,000. I play 5K to 2K GPPs. Want to make sure I'm making the right choices. I don't know what your question is, but I do think you just have to think about those things on a sliding scale. The most ownership percentages you will see, whether you're getting them on Run the Sims, on ETR, wherever, those are going to be catered toward large field tournaments. And so I think you have to make some kind of gut changes to those based on your field size. I mean, the simple rule of thumb that I think I've mentioned a few times this week is in the smaller contests and the higher dollar contests, ownership concentrates even more around the best plays. So a good example would be, does someone know what Mostert's ADP was in the SPY yesterday or in here? I doubt I can find a lineup that had it. Oh, here we go. All right. So he was 38%. Does someone know what he was in the Millie Maker? So Mostert was 41.1% in our $1,500 game changer. He was 38.8% in this SPY. I'm just going to guess that he was more in the 25 to 30% range in the Millie Maker. And when you think about it, the people who are playing in these single entry higher dollar contests are much more plugged in, much more in tune with the news, even though it's 90 minutes before game time that Trace Sermon is scratched and Raheem Mostert becomes a slightly better play. The large field bros, the toilet builders, are not adjusting enough. Yeah, here we go. 24% in the $5 milli. So you can look at that disparity right there. And those are the kind of manual adjustments you need to be making. To me, we talked about it with Leone and Holke yesterday before we set our lineups. And Mostert was an auto fade for me because I knew the small field and the higher dollar single entry guys were gonna steam him hard. I think those are the situations where you gotta exploit it. If you're playing that large field millie and you think you have an edge because the field's not catching up to what his true ownership should be, then you make that play. But Mongo, going back to your question, I think that's the stuff you need to be being careful with. And in just knowing in these small field contests, people like Leone and Dink and Levitan over at ETR are legitimately shifting ownership. Leone was like, Leone said about one of our Devonta Smith shares yesterday. He's like, yeah, his ownership came in a little higher in our small field stuff than I hoped. And I sent him the I think you should leave hot dog. We're all trying to figure out the guy who did this. It's like, yeah, because you guys made him your cover boy on Establish the Million last night. So those are the things you have to be very conscious of. And we talk about this of like the game within the game for some of these higher stakes small field things where salaries come out, chalk and hashtag play the best plays established. And then you have Dink and Leone come around on Friday with Dink's article, their show on Saturday. And all of a sudden they put out the contrarian plays to the chalk, but then those become somewhat chalky plays in those specific contests. So then you need to go to the third level and you either swing back to the best plays that are going underlooked, or you go to another level of contrarian where it's like, okay, Rondale Moore and Elijah are going to be the chalk. Dink and Leone say Devonta Smith is the pivot. Well, now we have to mega mind our way to Jalen Waddle or Jamar Chase. So you got to be aware of those dynamics in this small field stuff because it does happen. And that's why I think playing the same contest sizes or same contest each week is a valuable way to do that, because you can get really familiar with where guys are going to end up ownership wise. You do not fade that show. I'm saying it's important to listen to it and know that the guys they tout are going to get more ownership steam. If you're watching that show thinking you just found this little nugget that no one knows about, I can assure you plenty of people know about it. So if anything, it's a vote of confidence to be listening to that because you know what the field is going to do. And I listen to it every week. No one is more sharp than Drew and Leone. And I think they have to wrestle with that dynamic as well. And you can hear how that stuff evolves. You can then watch Leone and Wiggins, 10 a.m. wake and rake. You can roll right into me at 10:30. And this stuff evolves as the week goes on. And so that is going back to Blender's point of could you get away with just blocking out all the noise and looking at a simple screener on Sunday? You could, but you would also need to make sure that you're paying attention to updated ownership, because that is what's going to reflect kind of the things you're blocking out. So you can kind of do it, manually by listening to a lot of content, people you trust, people move the market, and then you can make those adjustments yourself, or you can just rely on up-to-date last-minute ownership. But I like doing both. I like keeping my tabs on what people are saying, and because it's fun, right? That's why we all consume all this content, because it's fun. If we were just here strictly to squeeze out this minuscule amount of EV we have, then we should just go buy NFTs and flip them. But we do this because it's fun, and it's fun to listen to our friends and smart people talk about fantasy football. And so then we just need to be smart about how we are acting on that information. Yeah, I disagree with this, Hodge. I was off on Gibbs or on Mostert. My take on Mostert is his touch expectation. And we'll never know, right? Like it was an awesome matchup, no sermon. But we've seen routinely, even when Mostert is in a good spot, that it's a next man up thing for the 49ers into that secondary running back role. We've seen it in years past with Jeff Wilson, with Wayne Gallman, or whoever, that they just bump the next guy up. And I feel pretty confident that Elijah Mitchell or JaMychal Hasty was going to get JaMychal Tastyburger was going to get some of that work that Trey Sermon was going to get. And then he's not routinely catching passes on DraftKings. He's then going to be very popular. And anytime there's a running back that is going to be getting, a 50% ownership tag while not catching passes, to me, that's a fade. But obviously on paper, he was a great play. And that's a reason, he ends up 40% in some of these contests. Drew, good to be back. We looked at your lineup earlier. Congratulations yesterday. Absolutely sick lineup there. Way to start the season hot. Were you not that tilted on tilt space because you're too rich now? No, I'm going to be tilted. I was not tilted because I wasn't drinking and I was sobering up from a week in Vegas. We'll be back to our pre-normal tilt levels very soon. The tilt, I think, also comes from you invest so much time into thinking and building lineups that just from a pure ROI on your time investment, it just like hits you in the gut because you're like, I could have been doing literally anything else all week and had the same result. That's where the tilt really magnifies. And I think because I was in Vegas, I was still in my season long mode. The tilt was just a little less, but I'm telling you, this week, I'm going to be neck deep in DFS. I can't wait to read my buddy Ben Gretch's Stealing Signals. I can't wait to read all the content we're going to get this week. And I will tilt my ass off next week when I put all that time in still brick. Let's look at a couple other things here. I want to look at the Deposit Kingdom Listener League. My bad. I made this league too small. I made it too small. I only made it 100. I didn't want to have to beg people to fill it this year or this week. We'll go 200. I think we can fill 200. I believe that's the max. DraftKings will allow us to do it. Congratulations to Stewie, 1963 here. Wow. Wins it with an Elijah Moore near bagel in the lineup. He does get Mahomes. Wow. This is a wild lineup. Naked Mahomes. If you guys want to see the case for not needing to use correlation in week 1, I mean, here it is. Christian McCaffrey and Joe Mixon just play the best plays. He does get the creative rookie plays. Look at this all rookie lineup. This lineup is so wild. Waddle, Chase, Elijah Moore, Devonta Smith, George Kittle at tight end, Chargers D. So you play the best plays at quarterback, running back, and tight end, and then you jam the rookie wide receivers and you win the Deposit Kingdom Listener League. I mean, easy game. Easy game, Stewie. I see our friend Matty G, 530. If you guys watch Ship Chasing, you will know Matty G is the infamous Gourmandji. He has a little bit more correlation here. He goes Mahomes, Hardman, Tyreek Hill, brings it back with Nick Chubb, plays McCaffrey, tosses in Higgins and Elijah Moore. Falcons D0 doesn't matter. And again, you guys want a case for playing smaller field tournaments. Like you can get first and second and third in these tournaments with zeros, with 0.7s, because you have to get less things right when there's only 100 people in the field. So nice lineup, Matty G. I see my boy Jason here, the OG original Man's fan, 22 Jason 22. Sam Darnold to Robbie Anderson. Very nice. Does he bring it back with, yep, Corey Davis there as the pivot on the Elijah Moore. He goes with 2 Washington football teamers, Antonio Gibson, Logan Thomas. I love the Marquez Valdez-Scantling pivot, of all those cheap guys, everyone concentrating on a few of them, getting to MBS there, jamming Tyreek Hill, getting that ceiling there. Very nice lineup. Interesting to see kind of the Washington onslaught there. Gibson, Logan Thomas, Washington football team with nothing on the Chargers, but I think it works. Pretty nice ownership here. Basically, Kamara, the only popular guy there as well. So we'll make that one bigger. Good job, guys. Yeah. Yesterday was kind of brutal for injuries. Sounds like we're going to lose Fitzpatrick for at least a few weeks with a hip. Jerry Jeudy could be anywhere from 6 to 8 to who knows how many weeks with the ankle injury. Although, man, when that injury happened, we were live on the Tilt Space and it looked bad. Someone mentioned it was reminiscent of Dak's injury last year, where you just thought, shit, he could just be done for the year. So thankful that's not the case, but I don't know. Could be a lost season for Jerry Jeudy. You want to talk about a guy who you could go back to that the box score watchers might not know. I mean, KJ Hamler just drops the world's easiest touchdown yesterday, and now a decent amount of targets opening up, although maybe Tim Patrick is the beneficiary of that. Why force MBS if cumulative lineup ownership is low? So the point isn't necessarily that you're trying to hit an exact threshold of cumulative lineup ownership. And also, I think in general, we need to be very careful with cumulative versus product ownership. We talk about this a lot for Showdown, but cumulative ownership, if I have two 20% owned guys and it adds up to 40%, and I have a 38% owned and a 2% guy also owns up to 40%, the cumulative lineup bros see 40% on both, and there's no difference. But there's a huge, huge difference, especially in the case with Showdown. But my point that I was making earlier is that you should just be breaking ties in advantage of the lower owned guy every time, unless a play is so much better that it warrants the ownership gap. So I agree with this thesis of I don't think MBS was that much different of a play of Marvin Jones. And yet Marvin Jones was going to catch way more ownership. So when all things are equal from like a projection standpoint, and one is going to be so much more popular, to me, every single time you play the lower owned guy, unless you have some kind of big correlation thing that's pushing you in the direction of Marvin Jones. Say you're playing a Houston stack, and then you want Marvin Jones on the bring back. Maybe then in that context, it makes sense. But man, especially in week one, so many options, so many plays that projected similarly. Just take the lower owned one every single time. I don't really think about cumulative ownership ever. And then as far as like product ownership, I'm mainly thinking about that specifically for Showdown. But I just think on main slates, when you have 13 games or whatever, there's basically just no reason to eat thin chalk. And by thin chalk, I mean, players that we don't either have a large enough sample size to know are very good. A player like Marvin Jones, who is historically the dictionary definition of boom bust. We don't want to play those guys when the field is overconfident in them, because we know they have just as likelihood of a chance to bust us here. Bridgewater definitely looked like he could continue making his supporting cast fantasy relevant. Had a good day that would have looked great if Hamler catches that. I agree. From what I saw, I was definitely encouraged to see how much he was pushing the ball downfield. A lot of good play action in that lineup. I think a lot of us have this probably wrong connotation of Teddy Bridgewater being this conservative game manager. And to see him taking advantage of his weapons downfield was definitely very encouraging. And the Broncos have a ton of weapons, even after losing Judy. I mean, with Hamler, Fant, and Sutton. So I think the offense will be okay. But man, Judy looked like he was about to rip off an awesome season here. Thank you, Jericho. I'm very excited to be back doing this. I had a ton of fun last year learning and getting better at DFS. 2 years ago, I was an awful DFS player, like just completely horrible. Last year, I made big strides, and this year, hoping to keep it rolling. And a huge part of that for me is I am, on Fridays, I'm going to bring on people much smarter than me to talk GPP strategy, to keep kind of driving home these concepts that we can apply week after week. It's the whole kind of like giving fish versus trying to teach how to fish. I'm trying to, learn how to fish each and every week. So I haven't booked my guest yet for Friday, but we will continue to bring on the best GPP players and try to hone in on the things that can actually help us win, as opposed to worrying about the specific plays. Obviously, we're trying to marry all those things together. But as far as like how I approach DFS, it's definitely through more of the macro game theory, that kind of lens. That's what's fun for me. We can head over here and look at the Bankroll challenge. God, this was painful filling out this spreadsheet. Last year, basically what happened is one of my big hits was on an undocumented play. It was because I think it was before I started playing a couple of the single entries a week for the Bankroll challenge. This year, I will let you guys know what I'm playing. This week it ended up being the spy and then the end zone, because I missed the secondary spy coming out. But I think for the Bankroll challenge, I'll be playing a couple of the spies a week, or a couple similarly priced single entries. I'll let you guys know. But we filled this out here. We had the one lineup with DK Metcalf that had some nice things going for it, but ultimately didn't get there. And then we had the Burrow lineup that busted. That's where we want to be living, though, right? First or last, low ownership plays. Either the chalk hits and we don't get there, or the chalk fails and hopefully our contrarian plays hit. I don't think there's a ton to look at here. I'm giving myself a starting bankroll of $2,000, which means I would have to about brick out 10 weeks in a row to go busto here. We will see if there's any money in my piggy bank if that happens. But for the sake of the Bankroll challenge, for this arbitrary construct for content that I have created, we're going with a $2,000 bankroll, and we can keep tabs here. I think last year I shared a spreadsheet template. If you guys want to keep track of your own stuff here, it is not fancy. I am not an Excel wizard by any means, but I do love me some conditional formatting. When I learned how to conditionally format less than a year ago, I started going hog wild with it. Nothing better than conditional formatting. Yes, but we need to get the big spies back, really be able to take advantage of our contrarian plays. Let's see here. Lundar with a question. Ownership projection question. When we see the projection percentage before kick, is that an average across all contests? Ownership, when you see the projection, what projection are you talking about? Um, I'm not sure which one. If you're looking at it on ETR, or are you talking about on DraftKings? I guess I'm confused, Lundar, by your question. Um, Let's see this. Worm wants the spreadsheet. All right. We'll get the spreadsheet shared in the Run the Sims channel, which, by the way, guys, I mentioned this yesterday, but I just want to keep driving this home. 2 ways to get in the private DFS channel. In there, you can become a Run the Sims member. You get 10% off with promo code Pete, and I will manually add you for free to the private DFS Run the Sims channel in the Deposit Kingdom Discord, or you can become a channel member down below, and that will give you access also to the other private channels in the Deposit Kingdom Discord. You can do that down below. You can become an OptoBro/hand builder and get access to that channel. We had a lot of fun in there yesterday talking GPP strategy, if there were any late swaps, and celebrating some nice wins there. So hop in there. That's where we'll hang out during the week. Also, I am going to be back tonight with a little showdown cram. That's going to be part of my regular schedule on Mondays and Thursdays. These are going to be similar to if you guys hung out with us on Holka's channel last night after the Tilt Space, where we previewed the Rams Bears game. We are, it's just going to be me. I'll eventually get some guests in, but just want to ease into things here. But it's going to be 25 to 30-minute show. We'll use the Run the Sims tools. We'll run Sims on a few potential outcomes, see which kind of guys are popping. We will compare it with some Establish the Run ownership and see where we might have some leverage points there. And then we'll build a lineup and get everyone all squared away. But I'm excited for that show. We're doing it specifically after inactives. I want inactives to come out. I want final ownership, final projections, so we can kind of make the best possible decisions for those of us cramming for Showdown. So excited to do those on Mondays and Thursday nights this year. That'll be tonight at 7:30, talking Ravens and Raiders. Raiders and Ravens here. He was talking about ownership before kickoff. Yeah, so I mean, I'm looking at ownership across the board. I'm looking at RTSs. I'm looking at established runs. I'll check in on rotogrinders. I'll check in on Awesomes. Sometimes it's nice to just see where the differences are. But that's kind of how I'm viewing it, because there are, discrepancies. And so I think understanding kind of the context of why there might be discrepancies on some of those is helpful and important. But yeah, ownership is something that I think is actually very beneficial to kind of aggregate or have a few different sources, because everyone's doing it in a different way. Brian, and some of these sites, I'm pretty sure Osimo, it's completely automated. They're letting the math, dictate all of that. And then, someone like Adam and Leone at ETR, Leone has, guardrails in place, a few things to make sure the math works. But then Levitan's doing lots of individual finessing on that ownership because he's so plugged into everything that's happening. So I like that there's people approaching it from different standpoints. I mean, who is it? The guys over at is it Fanshare? I'm blanking on it right now. Hodge would know in the chat, but those guys use a tag-based system based on mentions on podcasts and on Twitter to kind of inform their projection. So lots of different ways to do it. I think all are beneficial in their own right, and kind of getting a holistic view on ownership from multiple sources is the way I like to do it. Did you look at Mostert prior to kick yesterday? He ended up steamed way past. Yeah, we talked about this earlier. He was a fade for me in the small field stuff, knowing how steamed he was going to get and that he wasn't going to likely catch a ton of passes. Yeah, Lou, fan share. So yeah, that's another good place to get a different kind of process on ownership. Let's see here. One other thing I was going to see if you guys want to help me out with any underdog pick'ems tonight. Damn it. I had loaded one in here. I was going to take the Mark Andrews over here, 59.5 yards. And now it looks like it's off the board. They took it off the board because I could grab it. I also think Josh Jacobs under, he's truly questionable tonight, it sounds like. And a lot of the beat reporters think that Kenyon Drake could see the majority of the work if he does go. So if he scratches and you play the Josh Jacobs under, it's a push or a wash or whatever. But if he does suit up and then he's not 100% healthy and Kenyon Drake plays a ton, I like that Josh Jacobs under. I don't know if any of you guys have any other picks here you like. I don't think it would be awful to take the Tyson Williams over, but there's just so much, I think, uncertainty there of how that's going to look. Hunter Renfrow under 17.5. I know he gets loose occasionally. That looks kind of vaguely interesting. I'm gonna have to take a closer look at this. We'll talk about a few more of these before the show tonight. So I think that is it for me right now. I'm gonna go finish up the Fantasy Life newsletter. If you guys haven't subscribed to that, it's free. It's in your inbox every day around 12 to 12:30. I'm writing up all of the kind of most interesting performances from yesterday that kind of caught my eye from a standpoint. I believe that's it, guys. We will be back tonight for the Showdown Cram at 7:30. If you guys have questions about the Run the Sims, hit me up. I'm very excited to be using that this year, especially for the Showdown, the screener for the main slate, and then running the DIY simulator for the Showdown slate is going to be very, very helpful for how I want to build Showdown lineups. So I think I have that pinned in the chat there. If you guys need access to Run the Sims, 10% off, promo code Pete. Hope you guys have a great Monday. We'll see you back here at 7:30 tonight to win all of the Showdown money. Talk to you guys later.